Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Shares with Kevin, where we add value to people's lives, happening every day at 12 on eBizRadio.com. For our lunchtime marketing segment, our very own resident genius, marketing and communications expert, Craig Page-Lee. How are you doing, Craig?
Kevin, I'm well, thanks. Yeah, can you believe it? 25th edition, weekly edition of the show today.
Holy cow, 25th edition. You know, it does feel like every time we do this, it feels like I just spoke to you like yesterday or like
I know.
So the days are really rattling, and these conversations are really going out there, and I'm like, it's really, really awesome.
When you've done 25, you start really thinking deep around what the next topic is and how to thread it through and things like that as well. So I'm acutely aware of the 25th.
Fantastic. Great. So when we opened our show last week, I mentioned to our listeners how you connect and weave the concepts, the content of the show to the next one, and how that expectation happens. And last week was no exception. What was really beneficial for our listeners is the fact that you covered not just one topic, but 4 topics, all emanating from the week before when we covered the Big Brands for Small Business campaign with Hollowed Insurance. So can you tell us, or tell the listeners at least, how you connected those four topics in question on the back of the campaign that you've mentioned? Because I think that was really interesting how you put that together.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. As you mentioned, 2 weeks ago, it was a big topic, and it was really looking at how these big brands can and what they can do to actually help small business in South Africa. Obviously, on the back of the challenges that everybody's been facing through COVID, and the great grounding factor is that it's not just South Africa, it's a global phenomenon. Around the world, small businesses have really suffered on the back of the COVID pandemic. So we took that conversation a step further by addressing a number of actual statistics that we found that really gave us a good headline view of the impact that the pandemic has had in South Africa. But we also touched on some of the pressures that consumers are being faced with. It's a moment in time where they're stuck in front of their computers incessantly at home. Obviously, the pressures of work, but brands are using the engaged time to just spew message after message after message. And there's a lot of angst that came on the back of that as well. Some interesting insights around that. But it wasn't necessarily all doom and gloom in our conversation last week, because we actually covered 2 really exciting topics. And the first one was really how organizations can foster a culture of creative engagement and innovation through applying Nancy Kline's The Thinking Environment principles. And then we looked at evidence of that in the workplace by covering how Toyota Motor Corporation launched its Toyota Creative Ideas and Suggestions System, namely the TCISS system, which is still today in operation from, I think it was as far back as 1954 when the principle was first adopted.
Yeah, Craig. And for me, just the thinking environment from Nancy Kline's, I think that's just an impeccable kind of structure and a cake formula, as mentioned by the brand mama. But it was a quite sobering conversation that we did have, and the impact of what COVID has had on small businesses. That said, Craig, what are some of the key points for the listeners out there, just to share from our last week's conversation into moving into this week?
Okay, you actually touched on it. The piece that really stood out for you is what I'm wanting to talk about in sort of shares as salient points from last week, Kevin, and that is the 10 principles of Nancy Kline's The Thinking Environment. So let me start by re-quoting from her time2think.com website, which states that Nancy's whole premise is structured around the concept that the quality of everything we do depends on the quality of the thinking we do first. And the quality of the thinking we do depends on the way that we treat each other while thinking. An incredibly profound statement, Kevin, which really is brought to life through practicing the following 10 principles. And these are listed as follows. Attention, listening with palpable respect and without interruption. Incisive questions. removing assumptions that limit our ability to think for ourselves clearly and creatively. Ease, offering freedom from internal rush or urgency. Appreciation, offering genuine acknowledgement of a person's qualities. Encouragement, giving courage to go the cutting edge of ideas by moving beyond internal competition. Equality, treating each other as thinking peers, a really important point there, giving equal turns and attention. Feelings, allowing sufficient emotional release to restore thinking. Information, supplying the facts, dismantling denial. Diversity, welcoming divergent thinking and diverse group identities, a point that you really picked up on as a point that came about in 1984 and is only really being addressed in today's day and age in business, Kevin.
Yeah.
And place, lastly, creating a physical environment that says back to people, you do matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love it, Craig. You know, it's part. You know, each of these points I use, you know, randomly in what I do as a coach and leadership coach. But what stands out to me as principle number one is listening with palpable respect and without interruption. And I don't know if I read it or heard it or you mentioned it, but to this point about palpable respect and without interruption, someone refers to it as a violent response when you're interrupting anyone. It's a violent response.
Wow.
And I was like, that is really, really shocking, like to put it together like that. When you're kind of going, it's a violent response to actually want to interrupt someone, and you're going to go, yeah, it really is, you know, because then you're not actually listening to actually take it in, you're listening to respond.
Yes, that didn't come from me, but definitely profound. Thank you for that. Yeah, what I did mention to you was the listening ladder, and how you cascade through the listening process, and at each of the steps there is a corresponding reaction or action process for the listener. So the individual who's delivering the message and the individual who's actually engaging the message have commensurate equal steps, and at a finite point, then you can unlock the response opportunity. So yeah, the listening ladder is an important piece as well.
Craig, so what are we going to chat about today?
Okay. So Kevin, late last week and into the weekend, I was still trying to confirm our two special guests, but we're going to wait until next week for that. Got two of the respondents or recipients and participants in the Hollard Insurance big ads for small businesses campaign. So that's now being set aside for next week, definitely. And two quite different companies are going to come onto the show. We're going to be a very exciting conversation. But for today, though, I wanted to cover the topic of why small businesses fail and address a few basic points to help them through the next stage of their life cycle. And I'm sure you'll also have some great points to contribute to this conversation based on, you know, the number of great business leaders that you work with on a daily basis, Kevin. And what's really great about this setup is actually to use some of these points in the conversation next week, because obviously these small businesses have probably felt some of the pain points that we're going to address today.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're covering this, Craig. I think, you know, you've mentioned it on the show, the impact that small businesses have had, and those businesses that have had to close, and the percentage of that in South Africa, you know, is alarming. You know, so the fact that you know, if we can give some really good tips and tricks and maybe just some insights of you know, where people can start paying attention to where they might start failing, they might be failing, to kind of, you know, pay attention. So I'm all for this conversation.
Yeah, and there's a great article that I'm going to reference that really does, it alludes to those areas where you just need to be acutely aware of. If you address this, and this, you're hopefully going to, come through the other side a little bit less damaged than if you don't. But really, to start off with, I quickly want to just give some context to what defines a small business. So firstly, looking at South Africa, Kevin, micro enterprises are defined as businesses that have a maximum of 10 employees. Small businesses have between 10 and 50 employees, and medium-sized businesses have up to 250 employees. And what's quite interesting to see is that the UK is almost in parallel to the definition of South Africa. But really important to note that SMEs make up 99.9% of all business in the UK.
Sure. Wow.
And 96% of businesses in the UK have fewer than 10 employees. So if you just, I've lived in the UK close to 5 years of my life over 2 stints, and I can understand these facts and figures, Kevin, because every little corner cafe, every little coffee shop, every little small enterprise, every little refurbishment business, building business, etc. It's a handful of individuals, and they're the Bucky Builder Brigade that we would refer to in South Africa. Independent entrepreneurs, really just all individually contributing greatly to the economy. So that was an interesting set of stats for me. In the USA, though, there's a slight difference where micro enterprises have between 1 and 20. And a small-sized business is between 21 and 100. And interestingly, medium-sized businesses have between 101 and 500 employees, Kevin. But what was quite alarming for me again here as well, that this definition changes across industry sectors in the US, Kevin, because certain types of farming can actually be classified as small businesses, but have up to 1,250 employees, while other types of farming in the same category, other types of farming can have up to 500 employees for the same classification. So an interesting stretch just based on the nature of what that farming principle is. Is it highly mechanized? Is it highly people oriented and things like that? So quite a large stretch for that particular spectrum, which was surprising to me. So with that context in place, I want to now address the real article that I came across on lightspeedhq.com, titled 10 Reasons Why Small Businesses Fail and How to Avoid Them. This was posted on the 15th of March this year, and again, really fresh content. So we learned from the following, that only 20% of new business in the US will survive their first year of operations, and that 50% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years of existence. So very similar stats to what we shared last week, Kevin, on SA Business. But interestingly, the article notes that if you understand the mistakes that many of these small businesses make, you can definitely avoid following in their footsteps. And that's exactly what we want to try and touch on today, is just, looking at those 10 steps. So the 10 reasons why small businesses fail, referred to in the article, are defined as follows. No business planning or poor planning, failure to understand customer behavior today, inventory mismanagement, unsustainable growth, lack of sales, trying to do it all, understanding administrative tasks, refusal to pivot, lack of data, and lastly, poor management.
Well, Craig, yeah. So listening to some of the business leaders that I work with, those are definitely real issues that they're experiencing as businesses. Are you able to share some detail on how to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, Kevin. The good thing is the article gives some really great succinct points to each of the 10. So let's dive in and start with point 1: no business plan or poor planning. So yeah, we know this is true for just about every new business or first-time small business owner, Kevin, especially those that have not had any formal business training or have not been exposed to how to run a business in previous job experience, and even if they've had any training in that regard as well. So yeah, the other side of the coin is that what may sound like good business idea on paper very often in reality isn't, and that's a key challenge. So not just the fact that lack of business experience and training, the idea in itself might actually be flawed. So the article states that it does not mean that you should ignore your passions, but instead put a lot more effort into research and business planning around your big idea. The great thing about any business planning process, Kevin, is that it forces you to really dig deep to define what your business is and what your USP is, and your unique value proposition, and what differentiates the business from its competitor. In other words, how does the business stand out? So some of the points that we've addressed a number of times to answer that particular question is: know who your customers are, know what their buying habits are, know whether they're buying your product or service online, in store, or both. Know what your marketing plan consists of, and where customers will find out about your business and products. And all of the financial aspects of setting up and running a business are important. You can't ignore that. That's a given. Especially how much startup capital you have, what your cash flow projections are, and what level of cash reserve you may have. It's essential to know these facts at the outset, as they will help you answer many, many, many more questions formulating your business plan. And I think the cash aspect is important. What is your cash flow? How much cash reserve do you have? Because in many instances, folk dive into starting up new businesses, and they've got this high expectation of drawing a massive salary, buying new cars, and all of the other glamour aspects that come with it. Don't be fooled by that.
Craig, so I just want to add to what you're saying. One of the simplest ways to do this, I mean, there's just no excuse. If you're going to be starting a business, there is no excuse to not plan, it's slightly, and for guys, if you want a simple, easy, quick, effective way to start, there's something called the Business Model Canvas. It's by strategizer.com. It's a fantastic sort of simplified way of looking at everything that a business needs. But there is no excuse for planning. There's, like YouTube, you can learn just about anything on YouTube. If you're going to be starting a business, spend at least, a couple of months researching and finding and learning about your business. I think that's paramount to having a business.
And Kevin, Alex Osterwalder's Business Model Canvas has got some incredible videos as well. Just really great, insightful snippets on how to. And when you can address the principles of the how to, you're on your way to making sense of what this business can be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I 100% agree.
So the next point is failure to understand customer behavior today. And to quote the article, in our connected age, the customer is always right, rings more true than ever. For example, today's consumers expect small brick and mortar companies to accept credit cards and currencies like Apple Pay, even if the shop is a tiny mom and pop operation. And they demand quality customer service. If you don't deliver it, expect your customers to complain loudly on social media and with other communication tools. So again, you can't overestimate the importance of understanding customers' expectations in respect of the brand promise made. And any misalignment, Kevin, is disastrous for the business. And remember the conversation we had a few weeks back about ensuring the perfect balance between the under-promise and over-delivery quadrants, and that the over-promise and under-delivery trick that comes with it as well, where, if you're under-promising and you're building the perception that you're going to achieve through this over-delivery, consumers will see right through that as well. So it's about really getting to peg the promise spectrum in the right place as well. The other point to note here, Kevin, is that we all know how quickly a brand can be built or destroyed by a single post to social media. So it's vitally important that these small businesses understand how to use these platforms effectively so that they're able to respond to the conversation in meaningful, engaging ways while providing a remedy to the situation at the same time. And, on the topic of small business, I think it'd be really great if we actually saw a small business startup in our local market that actually focuses on just providing training on social media services to small businesses so that they really get traction that they need in this regard. And small businesses can use the following social media channels to promote their business and engage with consumers, or to solicit and monitor customer feedback. Word of mouth for me, which is the Priceless channel, and then Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok being the most relevant and popular.
Craig, just on that point, social media is so important, and there's such a need for it. But I'm guilty of it. You get so sucked into creating a video, and then creating a TikTok, and creating a thing, and then a post, and then a post, and a post, and eventually kind of going, no, hang on, like, what the hell? I'm not here for social media. Like, what the hell? So there's such a fine line, because you're kind of going, yeah, you want to speak, and you want to know how to use the stuff, but as a business, you have to know, and it's a daily thing. You have to know the line where you're kind of going, okay, I need to create content. I need to be able to do this thing and use the social media platform, but I also need to do a whole bunch of other stuff that goes with, and that goes, again, it comes back to the planning, right? So you have to do it right. You have to know what it's going to take for you to be able, and like, people have asked me, so I want to start a coaching business, and I'm going, that's a bad idea. Why are you doing it? And then, no, because they like helping people, and I'm like, that's nice. Then, go to an NGO down the road and go and help people. Don't become a coach. And the reason why I steer people away from it is because it's a full-time job to kind of make it happen. And you have to have nerves of steel. I was going to say the other word, but nerves of steel to actually get through it. And there's so many aspects that you've got to take into consideration. So, but yeah, I'm glad that we're talking about this.
No, absolutely. And Kevin, it's about just understanding how to get the balance of communications frequency right, because we can't overburden customers with too many messages and pushing one's products down their throats. And, small businesses, every single customer you lose is really detrimental to the success of that business going through that first 2 to 5 year period. And as you heard the stats there, 50% of businesses, startups fail in the first 5 years, and that is scary. That really is. Yeah. But moving to point 3, the important topic of inventory mismanagement. So startup businesses can't be successful if their inventory is poorly managed, which in most instances leads to either inventory shortage, not being able to meet the demands for products, or inventory excess, where there's no income producing opportunity around the extra stock, while it just sits in the corner while there's no demand here. So, inventory mismanagement severely detrimental to the cash flow of the business either way. Either lack of stock or too much stock, it's going to hurt your business. And it takes a few easy, simple steps to remedy the situation, Kevin, because anything around technology can definitely help. Anything around data in this instance can help. So what you need to do is you really need to understand what the sales pattern are, what products are in demand, where are your best products, what are the worst selling products, what are the best selling products, when is the demand cycle, is it seasonal, where is the demand cycle, is it geographic, are there sufficient versions of the product? If it's clothing, is there sufficient sizing or styling, for instance? And you really need to know your lead times and distribution times. And most importantly, is the price point correct? Just to name a few of the factors. So the most effective way then to manage it is through the use of inventory management software, or the great POS, point of sale systems that are available today. And these track inventory and provide reports on a constant basis. Even the likes of Yoco handset now can start generating reports for the smaller businesses on product runs, frequency, time, spectrums, and things like that. So these are really important tools to help you in identifying your sales pattern. But the article sums this point up really succinctly. As a merchant, you take on risk when you buy large amounts of inventory with the goal of selling it for a profit. If you don't sell those products as quickly as you forecasted, they can lose value or become obsolete. This forces you to sell them at a deep discount, or not at all. Until you can recoup your money selling your inventory you have on hand, your capital will be tied up in a lot of the unsold inventory. And when it lies idle for a long time, Kevin, you're not going to get the return on that capital at all. The article also cites, and this is important to note here, it also cites an example where in the USA, retailers are sitting on $1.43 worth of inventory for every $1 dollar in sales they make. No business can survive in this instance, Kevin. So inventory mismanagement has a direct impact on the next 2 points that we're going to cover as well, Kevin, namely unsustainable growth and lack of sales.
Yeah.
So looking at point 4, unsustainable growth, there's a fine line between getting the balance right and taking on more than the business can handle. 1, it will either erode your working capital, or 2, it will impact on the quality of output, which in turn, as we know, has a direct impact on the volume of sales, especially if there's a drop in quality. And Kevin, you know, in business today, slow and steady wins is really what's going to win for any, or at least is what's going to help any business survive. Trying to expand too quickly is just really putting yourself in the reverse gear, and it usually entails financing on credit, like small business loans and things like that. And those, as we know, just can backfire in the click of a finger if a business hits a rough patch. Yeah, just imagine the small businesses that were sitting there on business finance, small business loans going into the COVID environment. Yeah, there's no way that they're able to recover on the back of that, let alone meet the objectives of day-to-day, hand-to-mouth survival. Trying to eke out an existence is impossible. How on earth are they going to deliver on, you know, those loans that they had as well? So in that instance, no amount of marketing can fix poor quality. So manage this aspect of the business very carefully. Otherwise, you lose customers. Inevitably, you'll lose your business as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the inventory mismanagement has a direct impact on the other point, namely lack of sales. And in one simple statement, it tells us that nothing hurts a new business faster than not reaching its sales goals. One of the biggest risks here is the dependency on a single large customer. And, you know, so many businesses, or at least business plans, are built around that single large customer. I've got this customer, it'll help me get over the mark, it'll create 60-70% of my value. But putting all your eggs in one basket syndrome really is in itself a major risk. So it's essential to gain insights on the market and customer buying trends so that you can diversify or manage your product innovation around high and low demands as well. Analyze the insights gained from your POS or inventory management software to keep the pipeline filled, importantly, with the right product per customer group, and ensure that there are no seasonal flat spots or quiet times for your product offering. Diversify if needs be to fill those quiet times as sales generate turnover, and at the right price of sale, turnover generates profitability for your small business. And again, yeah, every business has a sales cycle, flat spots, but you've got to ensure that you've got something to cover the gaps.
Yeah, Craig, you know, you make an important point about no amount of marketing can fix poor quality. And I smile to that because you kind of go, no matter what it is you do, you know, like if the quality is bad, you kind of shrug your shoulders. You're gonna go, oh well, you know, I've got a bad taste in my mouth about it in any case. So it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
This reality can stop a business in its tracks and may require huge amounts of capital to correct, with the threat of eroding any capital reserves that were in place without knowing the situation and or how it can be resolved. And I think, you know, to this point here is that's why, you know, I have and I mean, it's a tough sort of narrative to go by, but you know, whenever I deliver kind of training, or not kind of training, when I deliver training, or I put together a program, in my head I go with, I can't get it wrong. If I get it wrong the first time, I shouldn't have done it the first time. I have to do it right now, you know. So I will have endless sleepless nights to make sure that I've covered and answered just about every angle about any sort of training intervention that I do. Because I know at the end of the day, and I've proved it, you know, at the end of the day, a year later, 2 years later, someone picks up the phone and says, so listen, by the way, you did this for us, and I was really thinking of you because, and that's how you create, you know, a wonderful business, because it's epic kind of proportions that you're affecting people.
Yep.
That's you know, the quality of what it should be.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, the key here again as well is constant communication. Expectation management is also vital with customers, Kevin. Yeah, it just, if you're not communicating, if you're not letting someone know that there's a problem, that there's a delay in delivery or production, whatever it is. You're in essence turning your back on the customer who you're depending on to make your business survive. So acknowledge your issues. This can definitely help you buy time and entrench a trustful relationship with your customers. And when that's in place, you'll be given a second chance in many instances. I'm really sure of that. So moving on to the last 5 points of the article, Kevin, we note that there's a focus on very much the operational aspects of owning and running a small business. And these are titled as follows: trying to do it all, the underestimating the administrative tasks, the refusal to pivot, the lack of data, and lastly, poor management.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the trying to do it all is a point that we can all relate to. So let me open this section with a statement from the article where it says, small business owners are a scrappy bunch, and they tend to view themselves as Jack or Jills of all trades. But entrepreneurs, like all people, have strengths and weaknesses, not to mention a finite number of hours in each day. Yeah, and Kevin, I can genuinely relate to this. As being part of a startup previously, you're totally usurped in the business and are forced to take on multiple roles, and not necessarily the right role at the right time either. You're just diving in head first and all hands to try and push it on. But the key point for me here is getting the balance right. You cannot treat a small business, especially as a startup, as a 9-to-5 job. There is way more to do in the day than a salaried employee doing his 9-to-5.
Yeah.
The more adept you become at running your business, the more successful you'll become, and the greater the chance of letting go and delegating aspects of the business to other competent and qualified individuals for that specific role. And this is really a key point here, is that, you know, the starter syndrome, hanging on to that business, thinking that you need to be there through all phases of the business, thinking that you need to be involved in all decision making. You have to, at one point, know when to step back and be able to delegate tasks to other individuals. So, yeah. Moving on to point 7, underestimating administrative tasks. So while you were planning your business, you may have been drawn in by the allure of happy customers, smart marketing, and loads of cash in the bank. Unfortunately, it's easy to be blindsided by the lure of these images in your mind when thinking past the slog and reality of admin intense requirements such as inventory management, staff or employee management, and most importantly, financial management, the likes of bookkeeping and accounting, something that the majority of business owners probably have no idea how to start.
Yeah.
So the article highlights an important point from a poll conducted by SCORE, where it reveals that 47% of small business owners dislike the financial costs associated with bookkeeping, and 13% dislike the administrative headache and the amount of time it takes from their workday. And the tip here is, as mentioned previously, hire accordingly or outsource the task to whoever you can, and never forget technology platforms. I mentioned SCORE, Kevin, and I did a bit of a review to find out who they were. So for the listeners that don't know, SCORE is the USA's largest network of volunteer and expert business mentors, and they're dedicated to helping small businesses get off the ground, grow and achieve their goals. And here's this is really impressive. So since 1964, SCORE's provided education and mentorship to more than 11 million entrepreneurs.
Wow. That's a lot.
that is a lot. And, you know, that's just incredible to see that there's a business that is single-mindedly focused on helping others succeed. Really, really great purpose-driven proposition. So yeah, moving to point 8, refusal to pivot. Yeah, I mentioned the sort of the starter syndrome. This can also be known as stubbornness. So this is interestingly, yeah, the third most important or prevalent reason that small businesses fail. And again, to quote the article, Kevin, it's easy for entrepreneurs to become obsessed with their business idea or product, even when all evidence points to it as not being a success.
Greg, so I just want to note on that point, one of the things that we from a coaching perspective, we all have human needs, and the human needs in itself, and this is not the usual human needs that we refer to as Maslow's model, but Tony Robbins speaks to these human needs, and one of those human needs are significance. The moment you come up with a wonderful product or a wonderful thing and you kind of go, yeah, okay, cool, I'm creating a business, your need for significance goes up so dramatically. And this is where stubbornness kicks in, is your need for significance outweighs anything that the business needs. So you're fulfilling the stubbornness need so much more because your need for significance is so much greater than the need of what is the right thing to do right now. And that's where your ego needs to get out of the situation. So when it comes to business, there's a reason why people show up like this. And it's my need and there's nothing wrong with being significant. Everyone needs it, right?
Yeah.
But if you find your significance in the most inappropriate way, or it's just feeding the lack of something, you also have to kind of go, okay, well, am I just being stubborn for the sake of feeding my ego? And do I want more for this? And I'm guilty of this, and that's why I speak to it. Like when I started my brand, I started it out as this one, and I was like, wow, I was working with the biggest call centers in South Africa, and the moment I had like the idea of going, oh, I need to get other people involved, I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. Yeah, I couldn't do it all. I couldn't get to do all the work. So stubbornness is such a big point. So sorry to cut you there, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no. Well, that's why I added it in, because it really is it's an essential learning. We have to know when to back off.
Yeah,
and we have to know when to look for alternate options and other avenues to help us drive success. And one of those, a key enabler in pivoting in today's age with the technology abounding the way it is, Kevin, is implementing an e-com strategy. Excuse me, it's not necessarily a given route to success, as obviously inventory management still remains a key enabler of driving e-com success. And as we spoke earlier, there are major challenges in ensuring inventory management is in place throughout this life cycle of the business. A simple example of demonstrating that is that physical store and digital store, they could have an equal demand in inventory. But if you sell out in one environment versus the other environment, how are you able to draw from one to the other, and what is the ability that the business has to ensure that you can move stock as quickly as you can from the online inventory holding into the physical environment, or vice versa? So you really do need to understand that there may be points of consideration to pivot and flip, but there are other factors behind those points of consideration. So it's not a singular step-by-step approach. It's multidimensional consideration in every single one of these 10 points here, though, Kevin. Moving on to point 9, lack of data. And sure, we've had many conversations around data and in the various shows. It's really important for small business to understand that they are competing against the big brands in the market. And if you're in the retail space, the big brands are the ones that have key advantages through success around being able to work with big data feeds and data streams. And it's essential that these small businesses gather as much info as they can from their respective businesses, because without insights, they cannot implement any effective business strategy. They will not know what the inventory stream is. They will not know when to pivot, etc. So you cannot implement effective business strategies to drive your performance of the business without smart data-driven decisions in real time. And you can only achieve that when you're collecting data. The simplest way of doing this is to have complete visibility into the revenue you collect and the expenses you pay. Without that knowledge, you're literally flying blind. And, simple things like that. If you don't have an insight to understand your cash flow, to understand where the numbers are, you're not going to survive. If you don't have an insight to understanding how many boxes you got to move and have available for an order that is in place, you're not going to survive. If you want to buy a new line of inventory, you need to know how it's going to impact your bottom line. You also need to know what percentage of your revenue you can allocate to that inventory, but also to your employee wages, to your utility bills, or your rent. So without that, you have no idea on where the next step of the business is coming from. On the revenue side, Kevin, you really need to know that your business has to grow month over month or year over year. And therefore, you have to examine all areas of the business where you're overspending to ensure that your expenses don't exceed your revenue and turn your business into a failure very, very quickly. The likes of the business model canvas really helps unpack that in quite simple detail as well.
Yeah, you know, just to add to that, Craig, the more curious you become, right? And the more you unpack it, the more your brain goes, oh, well, I didn't think of that, right? And then you formulate it. Literally, it's not that you have to go and create a business case. It's about literally getting your brain informed about the potential of all the facets. And when your brain starts just unpacking, because that's why I use the business model canvas as an example, because it just starts asking questions around stuff that, as a business owner, just because you're passionate about something, it doesn't mean you're asking the necessary question. So yeah, I mean, like having the data, like knowing, creating relationships, knowing what's working, what's not working, getting feedback, dealing with the feedback, and being okay with all of this is so important.
Absolutely, Kevin. And again, just the topic of data, knowing what your revenue requirements are, knowing what your expense requirements are, knowing what your inventory requirements are, knowing where you are in any one of those environments in a real-time scenario. If you don't have that, you are not going to be able to pay those bills, the employee wages and rent that I spoke about. So you're gathering data, having the right technology in place, and they're great layers of technology that are cost effective for small business that can help you just make effective decisions day to day, month to month. So yeah, there's a really great statement in closing on this point from the article, Kevin, and it says the secret to running a lean business is a long-term, ongoing strategy that strives to eliminate waste, to improve efficiency, agility, and quality of business operations, all while maximizing value to customers. While this seems like a contradiction, doing more with fewer resources, it's much easier than you think once you break it down into those small steps that you've just spoken about. The ideology of lean business is built on the methodology of build, measure, learn. And there it reiterates exactly what you've just said. Break it down into those small steps.
Yeah, great. I mean, and I'm just thinking from because that's always my inroads to any kind of conversation is how do you quickly, what's the human element? How is the quickest way to debilitate people or debilitate a process is with no data or no information. What's the quickest way to frustrate people or create uncertainty? Well, there's no information. You don't know. Right? The quickest way to curb all of that, the quickest way to understand it, to get your brain on board or set yourself up for success is to inform yourself. So, and that's why data and information is so important. The more information you have, the more clear your decision-making process becomes at the end of the day as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, let's move on to the last and probably the most important reason why small businesses fail, Kevin, and that's the topic of poor management. Yeah. So we learned that management's partly about attitude and mindset, and that it does have an effect on the bottom line. And it's not just about the product standing in the corner and what's going through the till. It's really a behavior and enactment that also has impact on the bottom line. Unfortunately, though, some small business owners become set in their ways when it comes to doing certain things, and inevitably incorrectly time after time. And this is especially true for veteran business owners. Assumption and complacency is also evident when a business is doing well, as the business owners often fall into false sense of security that the business is operating in the best possible way and most productive way. This is a dangerous place to be for any business, as mistaken beliefs and entrenched ways can turn negative at the blink of an eye, and you cannot turn that around. So in closing on this topic, the article concludes with the following statement, Kevin. Operating a successful business is not something you can leave up to chance or luck. It takes a clearly defined business plan, strategic operations, and sound financial management from startup and throughout the life of your business. While you might not be able to avoid every single reason listed above, it's important to be aware of and think preemptively about what you can do to tackle each of them and come out winning.
Yeah, Craig, I think everything that we've spoken about, all the points that you've mentioned today are so significant. But I mean, I take myself an example is I'm currently looking for a coach for myself, just in terms of staying in business and doing more, because you get to a point where you kind of go, cool, so I'm here, this is great, this is wonderful, and there's always more to learn. There's always more that you could be doing. And I think, just listening to this is, you must, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you must be able to just want to fail and fail miserably and kind of go, wow, so that didn't work. Okay, so let's get up and do something different, and to kind of, I think it's that resilience that really gets the next level of an entrepreneur or business owner to really step it up, is to just be willingly to embrace the change that comes with having a business and dealing with people and making mistakes.
Yeah, you mentioned the word failed. There's the incredible saying, fail forward fast.
Yeah.
So, dust yourself up, get up and, start again, but make sure you've learned what tripped you up and led to that failure.
Absolutely.
And do it again.
So, Craig, in closing today, what tips do we have to share with our listeners to sort of take away from today's conversation?
Okay, Kevin. So, yeah, the 10 points in themselves are really clear, simple points for listeners to understand. But I'd like to mention the following as key takeaways for today. Remember that SMEs are a major driver of economic growth in South Africa and, well, actually, all around the world, and that your small business is a contributor to this growth. Don't forget that. In addition to the small businesses are significant contributors to job creation. And again, we've shared, from South Africa to across the world, the percentage of employees that actually work within small business. Being an entrepreneur or wanting to be your own boss and run your own business is not for the faint-hearted. It is essential here. It is essential to understand what can lead to business failure and how to overcome these challenges or avoid them entirely. Attend business management courses, whether in person or online, and if you do not have the ability to run business, identify who you can delegate the management function to in your startup. Make sure that you have a well-devised business plan that can be operationalized. Important, operationalized. Make sure you can operationalize your business, because no matter how great the idea is, if you can't turn that into actionable delivery, it's never going to get off the piece of paper.
Yeah.
Running out of money is probably the biggest risk for a small business. Know what it costs to run the business, not just from an operational and product creation point of view, but from a distribution and marketing point of view as well. You have to have a well-planned marketing campaign so the marketplace knows about your business and its products and services. You must join Business Forum's support group. Support other small businesses where you can. Purchase your commodities and raw materials from other small businesses where you can, and keep the wheel of support turning. Reciprocity is vitally important for small businesses to survive. Every small business is highly susceptible and vulnerable to government policy change, economic hiccups, and unplanned catastrophes like the COVID pandemic. And as such, make financial provision where you can for these unplanned events and hardships. And last but not least, from my side, Kevin, never stop asking for guidance and assistance. It's often an ego thing, which could severely impact on the success of your business. That's it from my side.
Craig, I think so. It's and I bring it back to the point that I mentioned earlier. Like once you realize that that your need for significance becomes sort of out of whack, because you kind of go, cool, so I have this need for significance to kind of have, and I get this feeling, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm important. And that in itself brings a whole bunch of certainty, which is another need. And you kind of go, yeah, I love this feeling. I love that it's giving. And then you're going, yeah, and I'm growing and it's adding growth. So you're getting a whole bunch of needs sort of met. But at the end of the day, when you kind of go, okay, cool, if you need to make this bigger, how do I meet these needs and still feel like I'm growing, still feel like I'm significant, but yet how do I do this so that it doesn't impact my business to the point where I'm just me, the business, all the time? Because you're not. I love the reference that you use about entrepreneurs are a stroppy bunch.
Yeah,
they are. Entrepreneurs are a stroppy bunch. They kind of they want to do everything because they kind of figure it out, and they're going to go online and learn something, and then they're doing this, and you kind of go, no, but you have to draw a line in the sand, kind of going, what are you really good at, so that you can get other people who are good at what they do, and that way you're also supporting other businesses.
Yes, most importantly.
So do what you're good at and find someone who's good at what they're good at and get them to help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Fantastic, Craig. So in coming up with next week, so I'm excited about our guests. I know that you mentioned that we're going to have some guests. Hopefully we can pull that off, pull that out of the bag, rabbit out of the hat there.
Yeah, so I've actually had a response from one of the individuals already. So it's looking very, very positive. And tonight I need to just push on the other, and two completely different businesses. But yeah, really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Guys, if you want to catch us, it's every Thursday at 12 on ebizradio.com. Craig, thank you for all the insights and the information. I'm looking forward to next week. I'll chat to you then.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Yeah,
Cheers.
Look forward to it. Yeah.